let's talk about fear. Fear is a overriding and debilitating emotion, something that can take us right out of the game very, very easily and set us onto a path of worry, anxiety, even paralysis in our lives. And so for me, this is such an incredible topic and an incredible place to really dive into, because I think we're living in a time where things are very uncertain, and uncertainty can bring up a lot of fear for a lot of people. My teacher taught me that anxiety, the definition of anxiety is fear without eyes. And so that's really fear of the unknown, fear of what might happen next, and fear of future. And when we're living in this place of fear, we're really, really limited. We've got use of only part of our brain, which is one of the biggest detriments of being in a fear mindset. And we aren't living in the present moment. So teachers like Eckhart Tolle tell us that there is only the present moment, that inhabiting the present moment is the only way to consciousness and awareness. Because if we're in future, we're in a story about what may or may not happen. And if we're in the past, we are at the effect of our old traumas, our old emotions, and perhaps things that have happened to us that or for us perhaps, but that that were really painful, or that we've collected evidence around how bad things could be or how painful things could be. So it's for me, looking at the world around us and really trying to pull that fear mindset out of the story. So what we do is we get really sucked into narratives, into stories. Right now there's a big global story going on about how there is a disease and we are at risk. And that is a very, very heavy piece of information. And when we allow that information to sort of permeate us, and when we give away our power to choose our emotions, it can be very seductive to choose fear in that scenario. And I think we need to remember that our emotions and our feelings are indeed a choice. And they don't always feel like that when they kind of just crop up out of nowhere and they catch us off guard and they're like, throw us into a reaction, right? And so that's why I like to talk sometimes about tracking towards things. It's not always, it doesn't always feel possible that we can go from being ultimately fearful to complete calm. There's a really big disconnect there. And so the idea of tracking towards, of perhaps passing through an area that is neutral on your way to the emotion that you would rather feel. So, this conversation around fear for me is really about, us as individuals taking responsibility for how we want to feel, even in a time of uncertainty. And I think that's so important, because ultimately life is uncertainty. As much as we want to plan, and as much as we want to put different, foundations and milestones in place, track towards goals, there is no certainty in life. There is no guarantee that we get it tomorrow. And so being in that place of fear really limits our ability to be present in our lives and to show up as who we want to be and in ways that we want to be. And so, if we sit around waiting for certain scenarios that bring us fear to pass before we allow ourselves to thrive again, we could be waiting for a very, very long time. So the other thing I want to bring up around fear and around the fear mindset is something that I like to call spiritual blind spots. So I think we all have them. There's always an area of our lives somewhere that, we might have a value or a mindset style that we're very, very connected with and, very much invested in. And yet we're not able to shine that light of that value or that mindset into that one sort of dark nook or cranny, because we're just too invested in that story. We're too wrapped up in that narrative that it's extremely difficult for us to bring that decision making and that choice, sort of that power of choice, to that particular scenario. So what I'd love to chat with you more about today is there a particular area in your life that you can think of that really triggers you, or really just sort of throws you into a black and white type of mindset where you're like, okay, this is this way and that's the only way it is, and I'm not open or curious to any other opinions in this area? Those are the places I think that we really need to ask ourselves and sit back and say, So I have a philosophy that I apply to my life, and yet there's this one area that I refuse to apply it in. That, I think, is where the growth and the development lies, because those are those sticky places where, you know, that's the dragon, that when we slay that dragon, when we're brave enough to look in those places where we don't want to bring consciousness and we don't want to shine, you know, the ultimatum of our values into those places, that's where we get the most value when we do. And it's an incredible journey. And I think, you know, we all have, it's super easy to identify these in other people. Oh my goodness, right? Like you've got a friend and you know, they're super spiritual, and all of a sudden they just start spewing all this rhetoric and this stuff in this certain scenario. And you're like, oh wow, like I thought that wasn't your style. And so it's easy to see in other people, but in ourselves, it can be more difficult. So in my mind, the antidote to fear is curiosity, or definitely the middle point, you know, on our way to ultimately love. And I know love gets tossed around a lot. It's an easy word to just kind of say and you know, use arbitrarily. But again, you know, my teacher taught me that what is not love is fear. And so this is the big paradigm. You know, this is where it sounds so simple, but yet when we start to investigate our lives and different scenarios, that's when we really get the benefit of noticing and being able to apply this principle. So, you know, what are the parts of your life that you're not really willing to get curious about, that you're not willing to investigate? What are the things that sort of throw you into a rage or throw you into sadness or throw you into a really large overreaction of emotion that you don't feel super resourced to be able to unpack? I know it's a big question, but I would love it if you could, in the comments below, just start to share with me a little bit about those places for you, because that, I think, is where the true gold lies in working on ourselves, in doing our own personal development, and to, you know, reaching that next level of evolution as human beings where we can apply our values and our principles across the board without having these blind spots and without having to shut down or go into overreactions, when, you know, when we can really cultivate towards becoming more resourceful and more connected. Because I think we can all agree that what our world needs more than anything right now is connection. It needs curiosity, and it needs people to be able to step into their own light, into their own power, and really figure out how to be there for themselves so that they can be of service to their community. So on that note, I will end my video. I want to thank you so much for watching. You can catch me over at katiewebster.ca, where I keep my writing on topics such as this, and where you can also learn a little bit more about joining me in some of my small group meditation journeys or working with me as a coach. So until next time, thank you so much, and I look forward to catching up with you in the comments below.